Welcome to another episode of the Rain Race podcast. I'm your host GT Rain. Joined alongside me is Stu off in the Esses. It's Rolex 24 race week. How are we doing this time around?
Oh, it can't be any better than this, can it? We got the Rolex 24 this weekend, arguably the biggest race of the IMSA season. Probably not arguably, definitely the
Yeah,
longest at least.
definitely.
And just all the excitement that leads up to that. Cannot wait to hop on a plane tomorrow and get down to Florida.
Yeah. Both of us will be heading down tomorrow. We'll talk about that a little bit later on at the end of the episode. We were supposed to have an episode last week to do a more in-depth IMSA preview. Both of us were a little bit busy, so we figure we'll try to make up for it this episode. We got a couple of guests joining us, and because this is a live show, you go to chat box, you can ask some questions, and we'll try to make this episode entertaining as ever. So joining us first off today is Connor Zilisch. Connor, how are you doing tonight? Thank you so much for joining us.
Doing well. I'm at the track, so I don't know how good my Wi-Fi is. You two are frozen for me, but as long as I'm not frozen, that's okay. But I'm
You're
doing
you're
well,
not
other
frozen.
than the stresses of being at the track and not having Wi-Fi.
I should mention the behind the scenes that you never see of panicking before the episode goes live
That's it.
and trying to make sure
That's
everything's all set. But you're good. You're not frozen for us. I think that's all that really matters. And we'll try to get some questions in here. So, Connor, if you may not be aware, is racing for Aero Motorsports in the number 18 Orica LMP2 for the Michelin Endurance Cup races this season. That includes, of course, the Rolex 24 next weekend. Connor, I got to start things off here. First question: you're 17 years old. You've raced in a lot of things, almost everything from pro shifter carts, Trans Am, ARCA, late models, MX5 Cup. Now you're doing LMP2. Do you find it intimidating to step up to endurance racing with one of the biggest sports car races in the year, or do you think it's really just another box to check off in your bucket list?
Yeah, there's definitely some level of intimidation. Being your first endurance race and doing a 4-hour one to kind of kick it off is a little bit stressful as a 17-year-old who's never really done endurance racing before, and there's a lot of hours and sweat and a lot of effort put into this event. So, there definitely is some pressure, but at the same time, it is just another race. And, going out there and doing your job is the biggest thing, and not making mistakes, especially in a 24-hour race. You have a lot of time. So patience is a big thing for me. And that's something that's kind of changing from sprint racing that I've done is kind of your mindset's got to change. So yeah, it's definitely stressful, but there's no other team I'd want to do it with. I've felt very at home with Aero Motorsports this past weekend at the Roar, and we got a really good driver lineup and a really good team put together. So I think we had a good shot at it.
Yeah, what's that step been up to LMP2 like so far? Because it's probably safe to say it's the highest downforce cars you've ever driven in your career.
Yeah, it is, and it's been a big step up. Thankfully, Daytona is relatively low speed, so I'm kind of creeping my way into it. When we go to Watkins Glen or a track with a lot more high speed corners, it's going to be tougher for me. But Daytona is relatively easy as a driver, so it's been pretty relaxing. So that's a good thing. But the car is insane compared to what I've driven and what I'm used to with V8 stock cars and stuff like that. So it's been a learning curve, and it's been a challenge, but it's been a lot of help having the teammates that I have, Christian, Ryan, and Dwight. Ryan's been doing this for a long time, so he's got a lot of insight and has helped me a lot. So it helps to have teammates like that and have people around you that are willing to help you get better.
Yeah.
Now, you mentioned that you haven't done that much. You've done a lot of sprint racing to this point in your career. Is this going to be the longest race, this 24-hour race that you've done thus far, or have you done a 24-hour race previously?
Yeah, this is basically my first endurance race. I've done some like amateur endurance racing in a Miata, but that's the extent of it. So this will be the longest race I've ever done by 3 times. So definitely something new, but I'm really excited for it. It's going to be a big learning experience for me, and I'm going to be learning every stint. So hopefully by the end of the race, I'll be better than I was at the beginning, and hopefully I'll be an asset to the team and be able to help us hopefully end up with a watch at the end of it.
Yeah, you mentioned MX5 racing. Stu here, probably one of, if not the biggest MX5 Cup racing fans I've ever seen. Uh, you're no stranger to success in that series either. Could you just tell us a little bit how you perfect the art of MX5 racing, especially at a track like Daytona? I mean, you'll be racing in that championship again this season. Where do you even start for a race like that? It's essentially a pack race that it feels like every race of the season, but especially at Daytona.
Yeah, it's more mental than it is anything else. Being fast, you obviously got to qualify in the front, and towards the front, you can still qualify 15th and make do. But it's really just mental and thinking everything out is what I've found has worked for me. I always want to lead the race, so last year I only did 5 of the 7 weekends, but I led the most laps of anyone in the season. So that's another ideology, I guess, that I have when I get into the MX5 Cup series is, put myself in the lead and control the race. There's not a lot you can do running fourth, fifth to control the race. So that's one of the big things for me. And, just thinking out everything I'm doing, right. It's really just 43 minutes of putting yourself in a spot to have a chance at the win on the last lap. So, making sure you're there on the last lap. And, but at that point, it's just whoever gets lucky and makes the right move. But it's so much fun. Like I tell people all the time, like I have the most fun racing a Miata, and they look at me crazy. Like, what about the 900 horsepower Trans Am car you race? It's like, no, like the Miata is more fun.
No, I definitely see that.
I guess sticking with the Miata and the MX5, of course, going back a couple years to 2021, you won the Mazda the MX5 shootout that they have, and with that, of course, it comes with a nice check, and you took that and you turned that around into a full season the following season in the MX5 Cup. Can you talk a little bit about what that experience was like and just what that's done for you in terms of your early career so far?
Yeah, it's done a lot for me, and without the opportunities that kind of Mazda gives out and almost gives away, right? They don't get much out of this series from from what they put in. They give a lot of prize money out, and they're definitely not profiting from it. So what they do for grassroots racers and guys like me who may not have the most family backing and the most I can't write a paycheck to go run these big race cars that most people come in and race. But without that opportunity, I really wouldn't have been able to get a jump into pro racing. So it did a lot for me and opened a lot of doors for me. So I'm extremely thankful for everything everything that Mazda has done for me, and I still obviously enjoy racing in the series. I've got a lot of stuff going on this year, but making some time to run some MX5 Cup races. So it's a really cool experience to at 14 or 15 years old, whatever I was at that time, become a factory driver for a manufacturer. So that shootout experience was one of the most stressful, but one of the coolest things that I've ever been a part of. So to win that and then get to run the season full time, it really helps drivers that may not have the best chance to go race and the road to Indy or something that's $500,000 a season. So it's really cool what they do.
So, elephant in the room. Earlier this month, you signed a development driver deal with Trackhouse Racing, which is a NASCAR team. Amongst outings in the NASCAR Truck Series and Xfinity Series, which are planned for this season and next season, I'm kind of curious what experience the endurance races in LMP2 brings to the table for you. Do you think that that's bringing you certain experience that you might not get in other championships?
It's kind of like, guys like Kyle Larson that will say yes to driving anything. I feel like if he got the opportunity to race in the 24, he would. And, that's kind of the same way I look at it is I kind of want to drive whatever I can. I'm still 17, so there's no reason to, pinpoint one series or one thing that I'm going to drive and focus on that. I feel like broadening my skill set and running as many different things as possible is going to make me a better driver in the long haul. And that's one thing that I've focused on throughout my career is just driving as many different things as I can. And I feel like everything I drive makes me a better driver for whatever else I may drive in the future. So that's one thing that I've always done that maybe other guys may not do. But I feel like it's helped me a lot. And, people can say you struggle going back from one car to the next, but I've never really had that problem. I think it's because I drive so many different things that I never really get confused what I'm driving. So, yeah, I always enjoy driving different things. And, this LMP2 car is obviously way different to what I'm used to. So getting the opportunity to race it was a no-brainer for me.
Yeah, and you mentioned you don't really have a difficulty going between cars. I find that pretty interesting because you're actually, as we mentioned earlier, doing double duty this weekend or next weekend with the MX5 Cup and then LMP2. No real challenge switching between those cars going back to back?
No, it's so polar opposite that, it's completely different mindset going into it. It's tougher when you get into two cars that are more similar. As silly as that may sound, when they are closer and like running a late model, there's two different late models that you can race in the Cars Tour, a pro late model and a late model stock. And that one's tougher for me because they're so similar that it's kind of hard to tell the difference between them. Whereas like an LMP2 car and a Miata is so opposite that you kind of know which one you're driving, and it's so completely different, which is weird to kind of think about, but that's kind of how I see it and how I feel about it. But yeah, with this weekend, I don't think I'll have any issue. Not knock on wood, wherever it may be. Hopefully I don't have an issue, but most of the time I feel like it's relatively easy to go back and forth between two things that are way different.
Yeah.
It's speaking of back and forth between multiple different cars, Chris kind of covered it a little bit, just the wide variety of things that you're going to be racing in this year. Can you give us an idea of what your schedule looks like? What do you what are sort of your main season focuses, your full season programs, and then what are you supplementing that with over the course of the season? Because there's Cars Tour, ARCA, Trans Am, IMSA. What are we looking at here?
Yeah, I'm running obviously the Michelin Endurance Cup, the full season of that. So that's 5 races in the LMP2 car. And then late model racing, I'm going to be doing north of 10 late model races with the Cars Tour. So that's not quite a full season, but it's a lot of experience for me, and that's the kind of stuff, especially with my deal I just signed with Trackhouse, that I kind of need to be focusing on more so for my skill set is the oval racing. So that'll keep me busy for a lot of this. And then ARCA, Truck, and Xfinity, nothing's been announced yet, but ARCA stuff will be a lot of short track races, north of at least 8. So that'll keep me busy, and that'll be good experience for me. Hopefully I can get back to Watkins Glen, redeem myself for that one. And then the Truck and Xfinity stuff is just select starts. Not sure what team yet and not sure where, but it'll just be stuff to kind of get me ready for the future if I do end up making the jump to one of those series full time in 2025 or even past that. I'm not sure. But it'll be just stuff getting me prepared for the future.
Great. Going to the sillier side here, because I got to ask one silly question at least. You're in LMP2. Have you perfected the art of flashing the headlights to distract the other drivers at night yet?
Yeah, I actually was. I think I got stuck behind a GT car through like the bus stop or something, and the engineer comes on the radio and he's like, you can flash them, and I was like, yeah, but I was like first year guy. I don't want to be that guy, so I do need to be meaner about it, but I feel bad doing it. But at the same time, you got to do what you got to do. So I need to get better at that. That's one thing I got to work on.
Yeah, play some games. Maybe if it's our next guest, Danny Formal, in the car, maybe you do it a little bit extra.
Yeah. See if I see a Lamborghini, I'll make sure to flash him.
Stu, any closing questions from you?
Yeah, I was gonna ask what just before you go, Connor, what the Roar experience was like for you last weekend. Was this your first time in that LMP2 car at Daytona, or were you there for the December test? Just what has the whole experience been like?
Yeah, so the opportunity actually came from a test. Basically, they did a silver driver shootout where they had 4 silvers at a private test at Daytona about a month ago in December. And I ended up getting the seat from that. It was based off just overall pace, consistency, feedback, how you get along with the team. So that's kind of where the opportunity stemmed from. And then at the Roar, I only had 40 give or take laps going into it, so I didn't have that much seat time in the car. So, the team made sure that I got a good bit of laps to get myself up to speed. And I think I got 60 or 59, something along those lines this past weekend, which is more than, most guys get 25, 30, 35. So I did get a lot of seat time this past weekend, and it was definitely helpful. I needed it at first, and, I got up to speed. And, by the end of the second day, I felt like I was, pretty on par with most of the guys out there. And especially with my teammates, I feel like I learned a lot from them. And I still have some things to work on going into this weekend, but for the most part, I'm pretty close. So, I had a lot of fun, and it was a good experience. It was my first time ever being around GT traffic, really, and having to manage that. So I got kind of a familiarization to that, which is new to me. And there's a few other things that race rules and procedures that I need to go over that I'm not really aware of yet. Never racing in the WeatherTech series before, so. As a rookie, there's some things I still got to figure out, but for the most part, I'm pretty acclimated to it.
Yeah, it's a pretty big rule book to know everything right off the get go. So sure, it'll take a few races to get used to all of that. But yeah, you have a great team behind you in Era, and I think you guys will be in for a good season here.
Yeah, I hope so. We're looking forward to it for sure. It's a lot of fun.
Good guy Kyle Cuthbertson, who was gracious enough to help get you on this podcast, put you on the spot in the chat. He wants you to give a question to pass along to Danny Formel.
Ooh. Let's see. So Ryan Norberg, I don't know if you guys know him. He's a karting guy. This doesn't really relate to the 24, but he raced a shifter this past weekend, and I wanted to hear what I'm curious to see what Danny has to say about that, because Danny always raves about how we need to race shifter karts, and this is kind of like a kart chaser question, but I'm asking it in a GT podcast. So
Ryan's over doing a live Q&A right now on Kart Chaser.
I know. Yeah, they are. I saw that I was like, wow, we're clashing. We're on top of each other for this. But
I think we had this time slot first.
Yeah. They took us over. Dang guys. Can't help Xander and Kyle and Trev. But yeah, ask Danny how Ryan did this past weekend. I'm curious to see how he did. I didn't hear anything, and all I saw was the results. So I'm curious to see how Ryan did.
Will do. We'll do that.
Perfect.
Well, thank you very much for giving us some of your busy time this week. Like I said, I messed up earlier. I did say it was next weekend, and then Kyle corrected me and said we're getting on planes tomorrow. And it's been a long week, I'll say that much.
Yeah.
But he's absolutely right. Good luck this weekend. Be rooting for
Thank
you
you.
in the number 18 Aero Motorsports team. And it's great to have you on the show.
Yeah, good to have you. Hopefully I'll see you guys around sometime.
Yeah. Take care.
Thank you.
Well, there we go. I think that was our first live interview on the Rain Race
was.
podcast, at least in this new format with me and you. Actually, we've done it once before with Braden Neves. But while we wait for Danny Formel to appear to the show, because this is a live show, this was set up a little bit last minute, so there's some uncertain variables. I'm not sure exactly what time he'll be available. But still, we do have a big race to preview as well, the Rolex 24. That's the one thing. We had the Roar before the 24 this past weekend, which is, if you're not in the know, the big IMSA test, but also qualifying session as of the past few seasons before the Rolex 24. And we have quite a bit to recap. Now, I wasn't really being a great IMSA fan this weekend. I was out skiing, so I wasn't really paying attention to the Roar, unfortunately. But I've tried my best to gather a couple thoughts from the Roar, and I'm sure you are paying a little bit more attention to it than I was. So I'll at least start going over some of those talking points that I was aware of from that weekend. First thing I want to talk about GTP. Cadillac right now, it's not really a secret that they seem like they have the slight upper hand with pace. They qualified 1-2. We're short that third Cadillac on the grid this year at Daytona, but a 1-2 in qualifying with Durrani on pole. Qualifying time was like 2 seconds faster than pole time last year. New track record, actually, with the current configuration of 132.656. And And then following out behind them, you had the number 7 Porsche, 25 BMW, and number 40 Acura. So all the manufacturers represented in the top 5, but like I said, looks like Cadillac might have that slight edge right now.
Yeah, it does look that way, but I think people said it when he got out of the car. He said that we know that the qualifying means absolutely nothing for this race. It looks nice at the end of a weekend, I guess, to say that you got pole or to be the top dog throughout the week, but none of these teams are actually none of them care about qualifying. I guess there's a few qualifying points on the line, fair, and last year in the GTP race could have definitely played into the championship hunt at the end of the day. But all these teams are going out to win. I will agree that Cadillac does look quite strong. I think Porsche was the other one that looked pretty strong throughout the test sessions, but we don't know what all of the teams' testing programs are like. And I think at the end of the day, all 4 of the manufacturers were within 4.5 tenths of each other, which is certainly closer than we had all 4 of them last year. And every single one of the cars that set a time also beat the pole time from last year. So
right.
Everything is significantly quicker than it was last year. And as we're going to touch on here in a second, it's a 24-hour race. It's likely going to come down to reliability.
Right. And there's certainly not enough of a pace difference at the top right now for it to make a big difference in a 24-hour race, especially the Rolex, which, let's be honest for a minute, is usually pretty caution-filled, especially towards the middle of the race.
No LMP3s this year to help with that, though.
That's true. That is true. But we still do have a 59 car grid. Is it? Yep. How many cars do we have? Okay,
59.
Quite a few cars to potentially cause some carnage. Continuing on with Cadillac, they did sit at the top of 4 out of the 6 Roar practice sessions as well. Looked like they might have a little bit of an advantage in race pace as well. I think Nick Tandy had noted to SportsCar 365 that that's the impression he was under. But as you said, 24-hour race, the most important part is finishing the race first. And that's where Cadillac also has a bit of an upper hand, at least according to statistics and what we've seen in the past year. Of the 6 Cadillacs that have been entered in 24-hour races, we had 3 at Daytona last year and 3 at Le Mans last year. They have a 100% finishing record. And I think it was noted by Ewan Wayne on Twitter that they're the only current GTP manufacturer to have none of the cars go to the garage for any reliability issues. So if you want to continue that trend into this season, Cadillac really seems like they have the upper hand right now. That being said, Porsche has brought out a couple of reliability upgrades for this season. We'll be seeing those for the first time at Daytona. Nothing really on the performance side of things, but from a reliability standpoint, might mean that they're able to push the car a little bit harder over a 24-hour race. Just some of your thoughts on that as well.
Yeah, I think Cadillac has a strong record in these 24-hour races. They have had some issues in some of the shorter races, which is kind of interesting. Sebring last year and needing to put out a fire comes to mind, but regardless of that, a very impressive record in those 24-hour races. And I mean, they were strong in this race last year. Let's not forget that they were reliable and fast last year, and just got beat when the sun came up by the Acuras. So if they can maintain their reliability, their perfect reliability record, then I think they're going to be pretty difficult to beat. But a lot can change. A lot can change between the Roar and the actual race, and the weather is going to be a huge factor in all of that. It was a cold weekend.
Yes.
In Daytona last weekend, and it is going to be much nicer this coming weekend. So how much that's going to play into it, and how teams have prepared for that is probably going to emerge pretty quickly through the practice sessions at the end of this week.
much nicer. I think it's going to be much warmer, but I did see that we have some
Yes.
potential rain on the forecast as well. I don't know if that's changed over the past couple days.
I think it was a pretty low. It was, if anything, just a light sprinkle, maybe on early Sunday morning sort of thing. But yeah, I mean, it's Florida. The weather can change pretty quickly. So
Yeah. We'll see if that plays a factor. Yeah, I think to not sound like a record right here, Cadillac's probably the favorite. If I had to put money on somebody, well, first of all, I wouldn't put money on anybody in a 24-hour race because it's so unpredictable. But if I had to put money on somebody, naturally, I'm going to put it on a Cadillac team. I think I hate really picking the pole sitter, especially in a 24-hour race, because it's just so pointless. But when you look at the performance that team's been putting on in the practice sessions and in qualifying, seems like they have a really rock solid car right now. Pipo Derani said the car was on rails in qualifying, and that's really what you want in a 24-hour race, is a car that's not just quick but also stable, and a car that's easy to extract that pace out of. I don't know if that car is in the same configuration when it's in, or in that same state when it's in the race configuration, but you have to take the team's praise with that car right now and assume that they're pretty confident going into the race. So we'll see, though. I mean, how many times do we have to say it's a 24-hour race? Anything can happen. It could be a poor run-in with a GT car or an LMP2 car, and that could completely wipe them out of contention. 31 car also could have done a lot better at Le Mans last year, and they unfortunately had that crash on lap 1 that really took him out in the first 2 minutes of the race. So, never put too much money on a bet for a 24-hour race is all I'll say.
They also have arguably the fastest driver from last year's race in that car in
Yes.
Tom Blomqvist. So
Absolutely.
that's a pretty nice addition to add to their stable.
Yeah, I've been praising Tom for that drive last year for the past year now. So be really excited to see what type of performance he can put out of that car for this year. Moving to LMP2 for a little bit. What a surprise. What an absolute shocker.
Wow.
Ben Keating is on pole in the number 2 United Autosports Orica 138.5. It's his 5th consecutive pole at the Rolex 24, but only a 10th ahead of the second place Inter Europol PR1 Orica. How much more to say about that? I mean, it's Ben Keating. He's doing double duty again at Daytona, and once again throws it on pole. Probably had one of the best seasons last year. I think a lot of people said that he was the 2023 driver of the year, starting off 2024 with a big bang as well.
Yeah, this is a pretty impressive pole run here. Not just the number of years, but also just the sheer pace that he put up in qualifying to get that pole. He got pole by a 10th of a second over his former team, the 52 Inter Europol PR1 Matheson Motorsports entry. There was a 10th difference there, but it was 7.5 tenths back to the 3rd place entry. So, and that's George Kurtz, who we all know how good George is. So very dominant qualifying by Ben Keating yet again. It's a long race, of course. We're just going to continue to beat that horse. But wow, an impressive run by Ben yet again to lock down another Daytona pole with a new team.
Yep. And we can talk about that a little bit more later on, but I do want to bring onto the show, hopefully this works, this is the first time we're trying this, Danny Formel. How are you doing tonight?
Hey guys, sorry I don't have any earpods or anything. I left them at home. But yeah, everything is going great here in Daytona. Ready to get the weekend started. Thanks for having me.
Yep, great to have you on. We got the 2022 and 2023 Lamborghini Super Trofeo North America champion here with us right now. Won 10 of the 12 races in that championship last year. Absolutely dominating performance by you and Kyle Marcelli last year.
Yeah, it was one of those seasons that you win 1, you win 2, and they're like, oh man, it'd be so cool. We win 3, and then we win 4, and then, oh man, it would be so cool to win 5. And it kept going and going, and the team just kept giving us a rocket ship. And our team, it was super close to us in a couple of times. Ryan Norman, ex IndyCar driver. He was very, very fast too. Extremely fast at Road America, but we just got a little bit better race. I was quite aggressive going through traffic in Road America. That kind of gave us a little bit of an edge there, and then he got his maiden wins at Indianapolis, and it was really cool to be part of 12 for 12 wins for Wayne Taylor Racing and with Andretti, and in the pro class that's never been done before. I'm not sure that's ever been done in any class in Super Trofeo, so it was super cool to be part of that. Be part of that program. So yeah, it was a great 2023 and also a great 2022.
Yeah, and obviously not an unnoticed performance. This year, you got the step up, the call up to race in GTD in the number 45 Lamborghini Huracan GTD for Wayne Taylor Racing with Andretti Autosport. So obviously why you're sitting in Daytona right now. So talk a little bit about that program, and that's a full season program this year.
No, for sure. It really helps that I'm silver still. Hopefully stay silver for many years. Not sure how that's going to work out, but yeah, extremely grateful for WTR Andretti taking the chance on me. Wayne himself, Travis, the main manager, the team manager of Wayne Taylor Racing, took a big gamble on me in 2020. At the end of 2020, it's legit. I was a go-kart driver that did one Lamborghini race, did really well in Sebring in 2020. But again, it was just a go-kart driver, and they took a huge gamble on me. We didn't start so hot off in 2021, but kind of towards the end of the year, we started winning. And then 2022 was a great year for Kyle and I, and we won the championship. And then fast forward now, and Kyle and I will be doing a full season in GTD with Lamborghini, who I've been part of the young driver program since back in 2021. I'm in a different spot now called a young professional driver because I'm too old to be a young driver. But it's a little bit, let's say, the closest step to becoming a factory driver. And we're pretty close. So yeah, it's a dream come true to be part of this organization. Dex Imaging, now one of the biggest supporters of Wayne Taylor Racing. I've been coaching many guys in the team. Our new guy, Graham Doyle, is in the team with us this year, racing the endurance rounds. A novice, complete novice, and he is one of these guys that I'm telling you right now. It's January 23rd. He's one to watch for. The kid is something special. He's done 7 races in his life, and he's a second and a half off the pace of pro guys. It's unbelievable. Never did go-karts, never did Miatas, never did absolutely anything. His first race was Laguna Seca this year in a Super Trofeo, and now he's starting in the 24 Hours of Daytona. And of course, Ashton Harris, and girl power for sure. One of the fastest girls I've ever known, been a part of watching her grow, and yeah, she did so well with the Lambo last weekend. She got more confident with the car and did her best lap time ever around Daytona. So yeah, we have a strong team, but there's 28 strong teams. GTD, I don't care what anyone says. For me, it's the most competitive class in IMSA, just because the amount of drivers and amount of factory drivers you have. Most of these cars, no, it's a rule in IMSA. You have to have 4 drivers. So I'm going to do a quick one. There's 30 cars, 4 drivers, 120 drivers, and a good 80 of them are factory drivers. So GTP for sure, the highest class, the fastest class, the most pro guys, mostly all platinums, but you have 8 cars. So the chance of winning percentage wise is quite a bit higher than when you have GT cars, which in theory are more reliable than GTPs. It's just such a difficult class to win. And it keeps growing and growing now with Mustang coming in, Corvette bringing their own new car. It's seriously just such a cool platform and such a cool place to be right now. IMSA is just going the right direction, and it's so cool to be part of it.
Yeah, it's been pretty crazy to see the growth overall in the past couple of years, and some of that trickles down to many of the support series as well. You see massive
sure.
grids in Super Trofeo, the Porsche Cup, MX5s, like you've mentioned. I wanted to ask you, of course, you've been paired up with Kyle Marcelli now for a couple of years. He's obviously a he's been around for a little while. He's still fairly young, but he's been around for a number of years in the IMSA scene. What has it been like to have a teammate like him that you've been competing with?
So it's kind of funny. We're like fire and ice. We're complete opposites. We're complete opposites. He is very calm, very let's say OCD with stuff. He likes his stuff this way. Extremely fast, extremely detailed description of the car. And then there's me that comes in just ripple in the morning, flat out 110%. But at the end of the day, we give the same details. We like the car the same way, and we like to drive it the same way. So it's just perfect because we calm each other up. Like I make him go up a little bit, and he brings me down a little bit, and it's just like that perfect match. And it's been one of those relationships. Like I don't care what anyone says. Racing gets the worst of us sometimes, and you even wish sometimes bad on your teammate. You want to show off. You want to show off to your team. You want to show off to your sponsors. You want to show off to I am the man. I am the leader here. And it's not been one time like that with Kyle. And it's just been so cool to be able to be myself and himself and let the team decide what's what. And it's worked out so great. Last year with the evolution of the Super Trofeo, they changed the tires to the Hankook from the Pirelli, and I was better at putting a lap down quicker, so I qualified first. It had nothing to do with my speed. I could do the one lap earlier, so I could save the tires for him, and he could go out and qualify with a little bit better, because in Super Trofeo you use one set of tires for qualifying. It's two qualifying. Each driver has to qualify. So it's just stuff like that makes us match so well. Or whenever there's a limited time in practice, I go out, I feel something, we just do it. He doesn't even drive the car. He trusts my feedback, and I trust his. So it's just been amazing. I've learned so much from him. Obviously, he's been in IMSA for a very long time, so it feels really good to learn from him. And I think I've helped him to learn other things of the way I drive, the way I attack corners, the way I pass people, stuff like that. It just from my karting background, I think we've helped each other massively in these last. It's actually gonna be 4 years.
Oh wow!
In March. It's crazy. 4 seasons together.
Yep.
Yeah, right?
Yeah.
2021, 22, 23, and now 24.
Wow.
Yep. You talk about all those seasons in Super Trofeo as well. I'm kind of curious because now you're racing in the Huracan GT3. You touched a little bit on some of those differences, but what really are those key differences between the Super Trofeo car and the GT3 car that you're in now?
To be honest, I will say this, and it's not because I'm a part of WTR Andretti or Lamborghini, part of Lamborghini. You could drive a Super Trofeo good. You could drive any car good. It is a monster of a race car. It's 650 horsepower, with 305 rear tires, and hard compound tires because they're supposed to last for 50 minutes. It's a beast. No downforce and just some crazy power. We go 281K in Virginia up the Esses, and it's not flat. So it's just like, it's a monster. So when you get to anything else, it feels slow, it feels grippy, and it has way better brakes. So to be honest, it's a dream. Every time you jump in a the Lamborghini Huracan, the GTD, it's like, oh, this is unbelievable. Just so it's slow, right? Because the Super Trofeo is so quick. But to be honest, differences are more downforce, obviously. You have to carry a lot more speed through the middle of the corner. Brake release has to be quicker on the GTD and a lot more deep in the brakes. So that's the main keys, the key differences. The Super Trofeo, we have to drive kind of on a V. You go in as hard as you can. You stop the car, rotate the car, and go forward. It's very similar to driving a shifter kart, a KZ kart, and it's just you have to stop the kart, rotate, and go. So I think that's one of the reasons it fits my driving style quite okay. But yeah, those are the biggest differences. Just the power difference is so massive that when you jump out of a Super Trofeo and jump into a GTD, you feel like you have so much more time to think, look at your dials, listen to your engineers, look at your delta, look at everything, because it's seriously, it is that much slower on a straight line. It's pretty crazy that the Super Trofeo, it's a AM car, because that thing it's a beast. It's a beast.
So I'll tell you what, I watched you win your fourth SCUSA Super Nationals karting title last November on youtube.com/@kartchaser. Thanks, Kyle. I also watched you race in the GTD class of Petit Le Mans last year in the Acura NSX GT3. What's the adjustment that you have to make on both a mental and a physical level to switch between a 20-minute karting final and a 10 or 24-hour endurance race?
That's an awesome question. I was actually talking about this last night. We were at a dinner, and go-karting is 10 times more physical. People don't understand how physical a go-kart race is and how physical a shifter kart race is. It gets 100,000% of you. The 25 lap main event, you're dead, but it's a different dead because you're giving 110% from when you leave the pits, so you get the checker flag. In an 11-hour race, we do, let's say, a double stint, which is 2 hours. At the beginning of the race, you're driving at 75, 80%, watching the car, making sure the car is going to be okay, not hitting curbs hard, taking care of the brakes, taking care of the car, trying to save some fuel. So it's a different scenario. I don't get tired whatsoever racing a car, but the different thing is you get dehydrated because something you don't get from go-karting, the Acura NSX was 160 degrees inside in Sebring, 155 degrees in Watkins Glen. It is a sauna on wheels. So that's something you do not get from karting. So my first double stint last year in Daytona, even though it was kind of cool out, first double stint, kind of show off to the boss. We fell back to like 11th or 12th. We had good pace, so I drove a double stint 120%. Came back up to I think third or fourth. Forgot to drink water. Forgot to turn the AC on. Closed the window. Like it was a sprint race for me. I got out of the car. Both legs cramped up. My back was cramped up. My shoulders were cramped up. I wasn't tired. I was just so dehydrated to a level of like I'm eating Skittles. I'm drinking a Coke. I'm like, oh, I want some ice cream. I wanted all the fast liquid sugar I could find just to get my body back because I was going to get in the car another 3 hours later. So that's for me the biggest thing. Like I said, karting is just so physical and everything happens so quick in a go-kart because the tracks are quite a bit smaller. The power to weight ratio, I think a KZ is faster than a GTD quite a bit if you do the power to weight. So yeah, it's different, but at the same time, it teaches you a lot. If you could learn how to make go-karting feel slow, when you jump into a GT car, it feels 30 times slower. And again, it gives you time to think, listen to your engineer before pit stop, take your water out, loosen your seat belts, get everything ready for your driver change. Because at the end of the day, in a 24-hour race, I could gain a second a lap, but we'd lose 7 in the pit stop. There goes my stint, right? So it's just a different mentality. And that's the biggest thing. The switch, not so much from the driving standpoint, but what you have to incorporate into that race, and which is just a complete different mindset, which it has been difficult for me. I'm not gonna lie. It's not something that right away. Hey, Danny, go drive 70% for 2 hours. Well, what is that? I have no idea. When they first told me that, I was like, okay. And I went there and drove 100% just because I didn't know what 70% was, right? And that's something I've been working on myself and with the team and the engineers at WTR Andretti is, save some fuel because our next pit stop would be a little bit shorter than the other. You save some fuel. We could stop after the yellow and we can gain a lap. So it's a lot of things that comes into play in endurance racing that go-kart doesn't teach you. But at the same time, I do truly believe if you're extremely good in go-karts, when you jump in a car, you have a huge advantage on anyone else.
Right on.
I
Stu, anything from you?
I don't have anything, but I think Kyle has a question.
Oh yeah, so somebody in the chat is saying that you can't get a top 5 in the Rolex. I just want to get your thoughts on that.
We finished 5th late last year.
All right. It was an inside joke. It was from Kyle.
Oh, I get
Hopefully that clears it up.
Now I understand.
I understand the joke myself, so. And I know Stu's out there really confused.
That has something to do with my Super NAS racing.
It does, yes.
Yeah. I was kind of fired up.
So apart from racing Daytona, like I said, you're racing the full GTD season. Are there any other tracks that you're looking forward to hitting with that GT3 car? I know you've already hit quite a few of them in the Super Trofeo car. Like you already mentioned the differences between Super Trofeo and GT3. Are there any tracks where you've driven in the past you think that would be a really good corner to drive in a GT car with a little bit more downforce?
For sure. There's actually two tracks that I'm really looking forward to. Long Beach, which will be a new track for me. A mini supernats, right? Walls everywhere, bumpy, sketchy. So I'm really looking forward to that. That'll be my first ever street race in a race car. And Mossport. I did Mossport in LMP3 in 2022. Horrible experience. Horrible experience. The car was, let's say, not suited the way I wanted to drive it for some out of context reasons. And I broke the suspension going down turn 5, the left-hander downhill, flat out in the P3. The suspension just broke. And I was like 3 inches away from the wall. Luckily, I pressed the brakes with like the French engineer from Duquesne came up to me. He's like, Danny, did you see your peak pressure? In my whole career, I've never seen something like that. I'm like, well, yeah, man, I saw the wall. I put both my feet down. I was not going to hit that wall. And I'm a little bit bigger than your normal Frenchie. So yeah, I'm really looking forward to those. And also that's Kyle's home race. So I'll be visiting Kyle's new house he's been building for the last 2 years. So super excited to see his house. I met most of his family when I went in 2022. So I'm looking forward to that. But yeah, Long Beach, Mossport. My favorite track of the season is Virginia. And I'm super excited to go drive the GT3 there. We go there in the GT3. Yeah, I
With no
think those.
prototypes to worry about either.
Yeah, exactly. That's awesome, and no GTD Pro. Oh, sorry, GTD Pro and
Yeah,
GTD.
GTD
Yeah,
Pro.
sorry.
Yep.
There's no GTD Pro in Long Beach.
Right.
But yeah, I'm super excited for that. And yeah, most of the tracks. I love Laguna Seca. I love Watkins Glen. I'm not a huge. Everyone hates me because I say this all the time. I'm not a big fan of Road America at all. Everyone loves that place. All my teammates are like, oh, I don't like it for some reason. Maybe I like it in GT3 in the Trofeo. I don't like it. So yeah, I'm really looking forward to those tracks.
Hey, listen, I told Connor Zilisch right before you got on here to make sure he's giving you a couple extra flashes of the headlights when he passes you at Daytona. I got a question from Kyle. How do you feel about getting flashed by the prototypes every time they're going by?
To be honest, the P2s are quite slow in a straight line. The like especially like the Lamborghini is okay in the straight. We're not the fastest, we're not the slowest, but I guarantee they're gonna have a hard time passing the Mustang because the Mustang gaps me 10 cart lengths on the straight, and a P2 gaps me about 8. So they're gonna have a hard time with the Mustang, but obviously they're quite a bit faster than us on braking and turning. But the GTPs, it's not even it's not. I can't explain it. They pass us like we're Priuses on the banking. It is something abnormal how fast they are. So it's once you figure out the system how it works, especially Daytona, it's pretty simple traffic management here. If you don't have someone that's say kind of an animal and tries to pass you somewhere they shouldn't, it's pretty predictable. The gap is pretty big between the classes right now, which is awesome. There's no P3, which is even 10 times more awesome because the P3s bronze guys were the second slower than the fast GT drivers, but they could brake and handle so much quicker than us, and their torque was so high because they're so much lighter. So it was such a pain in the butt. So yeah, it doesn't bother me at all actually, just because again it's such a big difference in speed. It does bother me though, like last year a couple times, some GTD Pro guys were behind me just because they were behind me and they're flashing me and they think I'm going to let them by because they're GTD Pros. I'm like, oh, what do you think? No, stuff like that bothers me. But the big cars, they're just so much faster that they flash you to warn you, but you have spotters and camera. The spotters are amazing in Daytona, especially and all the tracks. But in Daytona, they see the whole track, so there's no really blind spots. So they help so much that you kind of already warned with 5 seconds before they're going to pass you. You already know they're coming. So not a big deal.
Yeah. And hey, I'll give you one more question because we gave Connor Zilisch the opportunity to ask a question for you. And this is primarily an IMSA sports car racing focused podcast, but he wanted to ask you, pressing question, what your thoughts were on Ryan Norberg's outing in a shifter cart.
It was not bad. I think he had good pace. Obviously, he didn't know how to race it just because how could he? He's never done it before. The guy who beat him raced like 5 races in Europe. And Homestead's a difficult track. So it wasn't bad. I think he could have done better, but I also thought he could do worse. So not bad. I give him a 7 out of 10.
There you go. All right, like we said, Danny Formal racing in the number 45 Lamborghini with Wayne Taylor Racing and Andretti Autosport. Best of luck for this weekend.
Thank you, guys. Thanks for having me. Yeah, thanks for having me, guys.
Take care. Have a good night.
Bye-bye.
All right. So that was great. That was a great segue into the GT segment of the show, of the podcast.
We totally planned that, you know.
We did. It was right on the money. Listen, couple things I want to talk about with GTD Pro. First of all, thumbnail implies Seb Prio and AO Racing on pole in the Rexy Porsche. Their step up to GTD Pro from the GTD class last season. The number 14 Lexus and number 3 Corvette Z06 GT3R. That's going to take me a full season to get used to saying. Round out the top 3. We had 6 different manufacturers in the top 6 of GTD Pro, although worth noting that GTD Pro and GTD start mixed, so the actual top 6 in GTD overall will not be those 6 different manufacturers. I'll talk about that a little bit, but I also want to get some thoughts. Well, all right, let's talk about the poll first. Seb Prio. Yeah. I was praising Seb Prio a couple episodes ago, talking about how I saw him really for the first time at 2021 Watkins Glen when he was racing in the Porsche Carrera Cup. Thought he was a phenomenal talent in that series, at least at that weekend in particular. Not surprised at all to see him put that performance down in GTD Pro. I think it was a track record, if you want to say, for GT3. The GTD Pro class has only been around for the past couple of seasons. So, but like I said, another track record performance for that weekend. I'm not particularly surprised about it, but at the same time, AO Racing, like I said, this is their first race and step up to GTD Pro. And I think given the performance, the unfortunate performance that Porsche had last year in the GTD classes at Daytona, this is a big turnaround.
Yeah, I was just going to say that you're not going to hear, I don't think you're going to be hearing too many complaints out of the Porsche camp this year in regards to BOP. It looks like, as we've said, a lot can change between the Roar and the Rolex, but this was a strong performance by AO Racing. It was not a dominant performance, but it was a very strong performance. They beat out some very good cars to get on pole, and I'll be honest, I was not really considering, I did not think that AO Racing and that car would be right in the hunt right off the bat this year. I thought it surprised me a little bit to see them get the pole, but a very well-earned pole, and it's good to see that the Porsches are right in there, it looks like, with the rest of them in terms of pace, and are not going to be bogged down like they were last year.
Right. And on the other side of that, because obviously sports car racing with all these manufacturers is a double-edged sword, and there's always going to be some team that's a little bit off the pace or some manufacturer that's a little bit off the pace. I wanted to ask you about Heart of Racing Aston Martin, and I guess the new Aston Martin Vantage GT3 Evo in general. Heart of Racing has one car in GTD Pro and one car in GTD. We also have Magnus Racing in GTD. I'm primarily looking at Heart of Racing because of how strong they were in previous seasons. Magnus has sort of always been, especially qualifying the M driver, a little bit unpredictable when it comes to the performance they can put down. But Heart of Racing just seemed like they were off the pace this weekend. And I don't know if you picked up on the same thing, especially in qualifying. They were 11th out of 13 in GTD Pro. They were stone cold dead last in GTD, at least in terms of cars that actually set times. And yet at the same time, they were the top of the timesheet in GTD Pro in practice 4. So I don't really understand if there's an issue with the pace of that car, if there's something the team's just not finding out with that car yet. But definitely something interesting and a real change of pace from what we're used to seeing from Heart of Racing.
Yeah, I'm not overly concerned about it. If at this point, like you said, they did have a good performance in one of those practice sessions, but this is obviously a brand new car, and it hasn't had the same amount of public attention, I guess, in terms of how much testing it's been doing. It was when compared to the Corvette and the Mustang was unveiled at it was testing after the 12 hours of Sebring last year. The new Corvette was testing for most of last season. We didn't hear about this Aston Martin hitting the track or see any of the initial photos of it until pretty deep into the 2023 year. And that doesn't mean that they weren't doing testing behind the scenes, but I just wonder if they just have a little bit more sort of baseline testing work to do, and that's what they were trying to get done in the Roar, testing the car. Everybody has different programs that what they're looking to do and accomplish, but I don't know. I feel like maybe they're a touch behind some of the other manufacturers in terms of how much testing was done. I don't really have anything to back that up other than just them not having the same amount of attention on their testing program. But I don't know. We'll talk about it towards a little bit later, but I think that those Aston Martins are going to be very strong, and you have Heart of Racing running them. They've really emerged as one of the elite GT teams sort of in the world. And I think that I expect that they'll be pretty strong come the weekend.
Yeah. Now, of course, if they're not strong, and especially if they're being, I'm not making accusations here, but if they're being held back by the big bad 3-letter word, then it wouldn't be the first time. Of course, we saw a similar story with Porsche last year with their 911 Evo. We've talked in the past about how new cars are pretty unpredictable for sanctioning bodies to get data from that they can use in the first race of the season. Of course, IMSA had that December test. They also are able to change the BOP after the Roar if they want. I don't know if that's really a problem or not, or if there's just something that the team has to figure out. But we'll wait and see. I mean, it's a 24-hour race, and if nothing else, it's certainly going to act as a big session for them to get a lot of data on that car that maybe they could extract more performance later in the season.
Yeah, I think I heard the biggest changes on the car are more on the aero side as opposed to, it is just an Evo, so it's not an entirely new car, although there are a lot of things different with it. But if the aero is the big new thing with this car, then it would make sense that it's going to take a little bit to get up to where they want it around Daytona, which is of course a high speed track. You have to have the car quick in a straight line to be able to put a quick lap in there. So I think it'll be interesting to see how these guys progress throughout the remaining practice sessions ahead of the Rolex and then leading into the Rolex.
Yep. Similar story I noticed, or at least a similar trend from the Multimatic Ford Mustangs, where they seemed like they were pretty strong in practice. Very interested to hear Danny Formal say they have a massive straight line speed advantage.
Yeah.
I don't believe IMSA posts the speed trap speeds the same way that the WEC does. So I don't know if I have data to back that up, but I'll be definitely keeping an eye on that during the race this weekend to see if it's anything noticeable. Especially because they said they were faster than LMP2 cars in the straightaway, which was very surprising to me. But they seem strong in practice, but just lacked a bit in qualifying as well. And I don't know, maybe that's part of the strategy with these new teams is they're really using all the time possible to dial in a good race car, and they really don't care about qualifying because why should you for a 24-hour race? That's a potential outcome as well.
Yeah.
And maybe that's part of the reason why Heart of Racing was so down the order in qualifying. But just seemed a little bit odd to me that we saw that with two different manufacturers, both running at least an Evo car, but in Ford's point of view, a brand new car.
Yeah, it was an interesting article on I can't remember what outlet it was from. I apologize for that, but it was I think it was Mike Rockenfeller who was talking about how surprised they were after qualifying, how all the other cars picked up so much pace where the Ford was quite competitive in practice. And then qualifying rolled around, and he said that, they picked up about 0.6 or so from where they were in practice, and everyone else was picking up, 2 seconds, and how that kind of took them by surprise a little bit. So whether, whether there's some games being played here, not necessarily for BOP, maybe it's just to get into their competitors' heads a little bit. But it'll be Ford's going to be an interesting one to watch when the green flag drops, and we're going to find out pretty quickly what the full story looks like there, I think.
Yeah. Finally, GTD class, Vassar Sullivan Lexus starting on pole in GTD, number 12 car. They're going to start third overall in the GT ranks, right behind the sister car in GTD Pro. And then number 86 MDK Motorsports Porsche and 66 Gradient Racing Acura are rounding out the top 3. I didn't really pick up on any specific stories in GTD to discuss, although actually now that I think about it, there was one car that did not qualify because
Moss.
Kelly Moss. Yeah, what had happened to them?
Yeah,
they crashed, right?
Yeah, on exit of the pit lane, it was, again, we want to talk about weather and the cool temperatures, definitely played into things here, especially on Sunday, as actually in the GTP class, Proton and Neil Johnny, he had an off in the, I think it was in the kink, coming out of the kink, came up on a car that was coming out of the pits, and going a little bit slow, trying to get those tires up to temp, and caught him out and had a wreck. And the same sort of similar type thing happened here in GTD qualifying. All the cars are exiting the pit lane for the first time. The session had just started. It looked like maybe just put the power down a little bit too hard, and the car went right around into the barrier, and they actually have had to do a full rebuild on that car. There was some damage to the chassis. So Kelly Moss has been hard at work rebuilding that car, but I'm sure they'll be fine to go for this weekend. But yeah, the cold temperatures played a bit of a role on the Roar weekend, and that was really the only notable thing to come out of the GT qualifying, though. Vassar Sullivan getting pole in that class. Not overly surprising. That's a strong team. They really have a good understanding, it seems like, of that Lexus. Of course, the Lexus is probably the grandfather of of the GTD class right now. I think it's the oldest car. Either be that or the Acura. But
the Acura is on an Evo kit, which only
that's
came
true.
out couple seasons ago, 2021, 22, something like that.
Yeah. So the GTD.
Elder wisdom.
Yeah. GTD was very close, though. I think 14 cars separated by 7/10 or 7.5 tenths. So Danny said it. Danny said that the GT classes might be, the closest, most competitive racing that you have in IMSA. And honestly, he's kind of spot on. It is there. We are in for some incredibly close racing, I think, in that GTD class.
Yeah, and I feel like, as unfortunate as it is, GT racing in the past season especially has sort of taken the backhand with a lot of people. Obviously, at the Rolex last year, everybody's eyes were on the brand new GTP cars, and then LMP2 had a near photo finish just to add some
Yeah.
storylines to that class. And GT, while there was nothing really wrong with the race in that category, just sort of didn't have the same storyline. And I was going to say the exact same thing. Like Danny said, GTD as a class, excluding GTD Pro, is by far the most populated class in the race. I can't remember how many cars are in just GTD alone.
23, I think.
23 cars. So yeah, I mean, how many manufacturers are you playing with as well? Definitely a lot of storylines to look after in those classes. So don't exclude it, but it's just my main point with that. Just keep an eye on the GTD ranks throughout the race. There's sure to be some interesting storylines. A couple new cars from Ford and Corvette. I'll be very interested to see how they can hold up reliability-wise. I know Ford, they had a sort of mini documentary series that they were putting up on their YouTube channel, and during the testing in December, they didn't seem massively confident in the car. So I'll be curious to see how that translates to a 24-hour race. But hey, that's always the new exciting things when you get a brand new car on the table.
We know it's going to sound good, so
It is going to sound good. And it's allegedly extremely fast in a straight line. So see what that's all about. Let's see, a couple more things I want to talk about. The addition of the customer Porsches for this year's Daytona 24. Obviously, I mentioned earlier, we're unfortunately down that second Chip Ganassi Racing Cadillac, but we do have the addition of the two customer Porsches that were not on the grid in last year's 24 from JDC and Proton. JDC, main story point with that is the addition of Ben Keating doing double duty. How many times has Ben Keating done double duty at the Rolex?
Oh, I had to research that. It's
like
a lot.
3 or 4 or something.
No, it's
more.
It's like 8 or 9.
Okay.
It is. It's insane how much he's run double duty.
Like, Ben, I don't think you're watching, but like, do you not get tired, man?
Yeah.
I mean, what a legend.
I couldn't believe it.
Yeah. What a legend to do that. And, you want to talk about, we're talking to Connor and Danny about racing 2 different types of cars at a pretty short time span
in a weekend.
A little bit different from each other. I guess in Connor's case, vastly different from each other. But Connor himself mentioned when the cars are largely similar, that's when they're harder to drive because you have those small differences between the two of them that take a little bit longer to get used to. So for Ben Keating to be driving an LMP2 car and then also a GTP car in the same race, mighty impressive. Oof. Hats off. So I wanted to discuss that. I don't know if there's a whole lot else from the Roar that I was looking to unpack. Like I said, I wasn't really able to tune into that much of it. But I mentioned earlier in the episode that predictions for a 24-hour race are absolutely useless. But at the same time, it's kind of fun to sound smart on the internet, or attempt to seem smart on the internet, or maybe sound like an idiot, depending on how off your predictions are. I don't necessarily want to say who do you think is going to win this, and this. Just looking for general predictions, and obviously the chat can get involved in this as well. I'm kind of curious to see what other people think is going to happen during the race. One of the things that was mentioned earlier, sorry we didn't get to it, I believe we were interviewing Danny at the time, so the 963 still looks unstable. Very rare to catch out Neil Yanni like that and other drivers last year. And I, like I said, wasn't able to pick up on what the car was looking like in practice this past weekend or in qualifying this past weekend. I know you mentioned, Stu, Neil Yanni had lost it, and Common had mentioned Neil Yanni had lost it in the kink. You said that was that one down to cold tires as well, or was that later on in the session?
It wasn't cold tires on his car. I think it was the 31 that he was actually approaching, and and I don't think he realized how slow the 31 was traveling, and it kind of caught him out. And it doesn't take much when you're driving a car like that, especially the very narrow infield portion of Daytona, where you get a little bit jerk the wheel just a little bit too much, and that's kind of what sent him around. Just a little bit caught out in that moment.
Well, I mean, and that's what it is, though. Those are the small things in a 24-hour race that's going to make it or break it. And I mentioned earlier we saw that with Jack Aiken at Le Mans, where it was a small thing, poor conditions, lap 1, cold. Well, I guess they had tire warmers at Le Mans, but still probably cold tires because you're doing a full 8.5-mile warm-up lap, and they were going slow, and it was raining, and they were on slicks. But
there's a lot of factors that you just rhymed off there.
Yeah, that's all it takes at a 24-hour race. And in IMSA, where they don't get tire warmers, and it doesn't look like it's going to be massively cold at night this year, but something to consider.
What if we get that? We were talking about it earlier. What if you get that little early morning sprinkle on Sunday morning? You know, the track's not very warm at that point, even though it's not supposed to get super cold at night. Get a little bit of a sprinkle. It's kind of still the cool morning hours, and you're on slicks. Yeah, it wouldn't take much. Take much.
All right. Even though I said I don't want to do this, if we're gonna go class by class, just to throw darts at a board and see if we sound smart, we're doing it. I mentioned earlier, it's so difficult to pick against Cadillac right now because the cards are really in their favor. At the same time, it's a toss-up because the cars in reality are not that far apart. And I think especially in race conditions, we'll see those cars pretty close. And I wouldn't be surprised if we're at a point where all of those manufacturers lead at some point in the race, as we saw last year with the exception of BMW. Now, on the note of BMW, a lot better performance out of their car, at least so far from what we saw at the Roar, than where they were last year. I think last year they were really at a point where they were running the car 80%, 90%, whatever they had to do to try to get that car in a reliability window to finish the race. This year, the car's a lot more proven, has a lot more miles on it, and I think the team's showing a lot more confidence. They qualified 4th. They're still hunting down that first on-track victory that is not the result of a technical infraction from another manufacturer or another team. I think they'll be up there at some point in the race. I really would be shocked if we don't see them in the lead at some point. The addition of that new Wayne Taylor racing car, very strong out of the gate for the number 40. Jordan Taylor seems like he's gotten back up to speed almost immediately in a GTP car. First time driving the GTP car in an official session. And he's been racing in GTD Pro cars or GTLM cars, if you want to include that as well, since 2020. Was that the first year he started with Corvette? 20 or 21.
It was around it. Well, he's been racing with Corvette for a while because he was in the GM,
right?
You know,
he's been racing with them for 10 years.
Yeah, I don't remember. It was a few years that he raced.
It was definitely one of those two.
Yeah,
I think it was 21. I can't remember though. Point being, back up to speed very quickly. And these GTP cars drive pretty differently to the DPI cars that he would have been used to racing before.
Yeah.
With a new brake-by-wire system, a lot heavier, less downforce, but also a little bit more straight line speed as well. Let's see. Looking down the rest of the order, Porsche, they qualified P3. I feel like Porsche has a little bit more to prove in these 24-hour races. They had a disappointing Le Mans last year. At the Rolex last year, they led a little bit throughout the nighttime hours and looked like they were really a contender for a while, but then as the sun started to come up again, weren't really in the picture anymore. So I'm curious to see how they can perform this year. But my main takeaway with GTP is Cadillac's the team to beat. What stage of the race are they going to be down to the other manufacturers, if any? Because the other manufacturers and teams are going to have to capitalize on that as much as possible. Because I think once the sun comes up again, that's when I would expect Cadillac to be in the running again, like they were in the later stages of last year. But we'll see if there's a manufacturer like Acura who can take it to them at the very end.
So who are you picking?
I'm picking Cadillac. I mean, it's a safe, easy, cheap cop-out bet, but
man,
like I said, all the cards are in their favor right now, so I'd be reluctant not to.
Fair. That's
I guess if specifically I'll pick the 31 if we're going to go even easier. just because of their driver lineup and the performance they've put out this week and the confidence they seem like they have in that car. Yep. Again, I hate picking the pole sitter, but
no, I think you're picking the car that looks the best right now, and I think that's a completely fair way to go. That's the way I was going to go. That was 31 was my pick, but in the interest of making things interesting, I will go with the number 40 Wayne Taylor. Yes, Wayne Taylor Racing with Andretti Acura. I think we talked about it a little bit. Jordan Taylor, of course, strong there. But the driver that I want to highlight on that team, who I think is going to tear it up this year, is Louis Delatraz. One of the fastest drivers in that class last year, and he didn't get the opportunity to do it over a full season. But I think we are going to see him excel in that full season driver role, and I think he's going to excel in this race and lead Wayne Taylor Racing to victory.
There you go. So I was trying to make a video before the Rolex of just some thoughts and things to look out for. That video is not going to get completed, unfortunately. I ran out of time.
No?
No. I misjudged that one a little bit. I apologize. I'll try to make up for it after Daytona. One of the things that I talked about in that video was Wayne Taylor Racing, and I think they need to, number one, get a good start to the season, but they also need to work on consistency. And I don't want to talk about the entire season right now because that's not the point of this episode, but if they do get a victory at Daytona, which they have many times, Acura has won the last three Rolex 24s now. So, they're certainly a big contender for winning the race. But I would like to see Wayne Taylor Racing really carry that consistency, because that's what won them the championship back in 2017. And I think that's what they've really been lacking in recent seasons. That's made them finish runner-up every season since 2020 or 2021. Again, between those two seasons, they were such a weird time that they always get mixed up with me. So I'll be looking out for that. For LMP2, difficult one as well. I mean, we're talking about a class where all the cars are largely identical except for the one Sean Creech Motorsports Ligier this season, which I'll be secretly rooting for, but also rooting for Connor Zilisch and Era Motorsport, by the way. But I would love to see a Ligier do pretty well in the race and pretty well throughout the season. I think realistically, what car is James Allen
in? James Allen. He is in the Dragon Speed, number 51. They have a pretty strong track record at the Rolex, don't they?
They do have a good track record. I was talking about that in the last episode. And also, James Allen, of course, pulling the late race victory last year at Daytona in the final moments with that near photo finish. I think Dragon Speed's a bit of a sleeper pick, and they were a late entry into the race. They didn't qualify quite as high as they probably could have, but they have the experience, and they've won, I think, 3 of the last 4 Rolex 24s or something. There was some stat that went really well in their favor. I'm really blanking tonight. I apologize about that.
No, it is like 3 out of the last 4 Rolexes that they've entered.
4 out of the last 5 or something like that. Yeah. So yeah, they're my sleeper pick. And that's probably the only one I'm going to say for now, because the rest of them are such a toss-up that it's hard to pick one for sure. But I will be rooting for the 18 Era Motorsport as well.
Yeah, I think this is, you need to flip like a 13-sided coin or a 13-sided die on this one, and you probably be pretty content with whatever you roll. But I think there is one entry that is a step above the rest, and that is the pole sitting car. A number 2. Yeah. I'm going to take my cheap pick now. The United Autosports Orica. United is going to be, well, they have raced plenty in IMSA in the past, but joining up with an established JR3, I think it is the team that is helping them run that. Of course, the former the LMP3 runners from previous years, but Ben Hanley, Pato Award, Ben Keating, and Nico Pino. That is a strong lineup of drivers, and they are going to be very difficult to beat.
Yeah, absolutely, it'll be difficult. But I wouldn't let myself pick 2 pole sitters in a row. But yes, I agree. Quietly, I agree that they're.
You had to leave me some low hanging fruit, right?
They're a big contender, absolutely. GTD Pro. Now this is where I start to get a little bit interested because, like I said, we have those new cars. And aside from just predicting who's going to win, which is getting increasingly more difficult the farther down we go, I'm very curious to see what the performance of that Ford is.
Yeah,
and I mentioned earlier that they didn't seem entirely confident in December. Now I don't know how much that's changed in the past month or so, but that's what I'm looking at. I'm looking at how they can get out of the gate with that brand new GT3 car. Corvette's in a similar position as well, but Corvette, obviously, they're sort of building off of the experience they have with that platform from running the modified C8R GT3 car. So I really Ford's the one that I got my eye on for reliability. In terms of who I think is going to win the race, it's tricky again, but this might be the year Lexus, I think, gets a victory in GTD Pro. They're very strong. Did I steal your pick?
No.
Oh, okay. No. I thought I heard a little bit of a disappointing sigh there.
No, I'm intrigued.
They're qualified 2-3. So you can say it's an easy pick, but they got a great driver lineup in the number 14 car, and I feel like they've just been a little bit shy the past few seasons at Daytona, but this might be the year that they finally get a breakthrough.
Yeah, that's a good pick. Obviously, the dominant GTD Pro champions from last year. That's a strong one to go with. Not the pole sitter, so you're off the hook there. I'm going to pull out my 13-sided die again because there's also 13 entries in this class. Very convenient. And every single time I rolled it, it came up with the number 9 Pfaff Motorsports McLaren. I don't really understand how that happened, but
that's weird.
I guess that's what happens when the team gives you that die. So, so I think you could make a very good argument for any of these teams in GTD Pro. Very strong lineups all around, but I am going to go full homer on this one and pick Pfaff. I think I have something to back it up, though. That McLaren was very strong throughout last season. It didn't race at the Rolex last year. It was the non-Evo version that raced at last year's Rolex. But that car was very strong last year. I think Pfaff can get up to speed with it pretty quickly, and I think they have a strong driver lineup that can take home bring another Rolex, bring some more Rolexes north of the border.
Yeah. And then finally for GTD, this one's a toss-up. Again, we can't overstate that enough, but you heard it from Danny Formel himself. I'm going to say the 47 Cheddar Racing Ferrari. I don't know what it is. Something about it speaks to me. That's all I'm going to say. But also at the same time, very interested to see how the customer AWA Corvettes perform with the team stepping up from LMP3 from last season.
They won the Rolex last year in LMP3.
They did win the Rolex. And I'll be curious to see how they perform with that brand new car. This is the first time we're seeing customer Corvettes from Pratt & Miller, or not Pratt & Miller prepared customer Corvettes in a long time. It hasn't been, I guess, since the customer C7Rs that raced back in 2017, I believe is the last time we saw one of those. So I'll be very interested to see what that all looks like.
Yeah, I mean, at the very least, those cars look very good out on track. They look very clean, very well done on those liveries. I feel like one of the cars that we haven't talked. You talk about Ford looking slow. How about the Mercedes? That Mercedes looks like it's standing still compared to some of the other competitors out there on track. Right near the bottom, all four of the cars that are entered, right near the bottom. The fact that we didn't even mention the Sun Energy One entry of Jules Gounon, is it Lucas Stoltz, Mauro Engel, and Kenny Habul? Yeah, that's a stacked lineup, and they were fairly off the pace when it came to qualifying. So again, it's just qualifying. Mercedes has been very strong here in recent years. They won Pro last year. They were leading GTD late into the race last year before catastrophe struck for Windward, as it did for much of last season. But ultimately the pick that I'm going to go with, starting second last in that class, it's the defending champions, the Heart of Racing Aston Martin. I think you look at that lineup, Romain DeAngelis recently upgraded to gold for good reason. Zach Robichon, very strong driver there as well. He's young, but he has a very strong racing resume under his belt. Ian James, and then factory driver Marco Sorensen. That's a pretty darn strong lineup. And while they may be off the pace at this moment compared to what at least in qualifying, I think they're going to figure it out for the race and come out strong.
Yeah. It's an ambitious pick, I'll give you that, because I spent an entire segment in the episode talking about how they were notably slow. So we'll see if that translates into race pace, and if it doesn't, they certainly have the driver lineup to back it up.
To be fair, they only ran 2 laps in qualifying because that accident eliminated half of the GT session. So, things are a little bit of a toss-up for the GTs.
Yep. Yeah. Also, though, just because we had them on the episode, looking at the 45 Lamborghini, Wayne Taylor Racing with Andretti Autosport, Danny Formal, Kyle Marcelli, full-time drivers in that car. Do you need to look further than their performance in Super Trofeo to know that that's a good pairing?
Yeah.
And they qualified, I'm just looking at the order. Fourth in GTD. So considering that's their first step up as a team to the Lamborghini and GTD, don't count them out. I mean, that looks like a very competitive team as well right now.
Yeah, that's a good roster of drivers as well. And that Lambo looks pretty racy from what we've seen this year. Last year at this time, it was one of those cars that maybe was getting bit by the BOP bug a little bit. But this year they look quite strong.
Yeah. Any other darts you want to throw before we wrap this episode up? I'm curious, thing that's going to catch a certain team out or anything like that.
I think that we are going to see more of a war of attrition than we have in previous years, specifically in the GT classes. I think there's so many GT cars that are going to be out on track, and we saw it come into play a little bit towards the end of last season, especially at Petit Le Mans. There were a number of incidents that we saw, and GT cars were involved, whether it was their fault or not in a lot of them. But I think factor in the sheer amount of GT traffic that we're going to see, and also factor in so many brand new cars that we are going to be seeing in those classes, I think we might see some reliability and then also traffic potentially play into that war of attrition. It's not going to be the same level as it was in LMP3 last year. We saw the winners have like a 17 lap lead at the end of it. But I think we're gonna see some attrition in the GT classes.
Yeah, and one of the other things is I have a hunch, even though I sort of said something against it earlier, that we could have some long green flag runs throughout the race. Actually, though, the finish is what I'm curious about, because to my knowledge and recollection, which is kind of poor, the past few years at Daytona, I don't feel like we've gotten a late yellow like in the final hour. I know we didn't last year, but I'm just trying to think back to previous years. It feels like towards the end of the race, it's generally been run under green flag conditions. And I feel like there might be something this year where that changes. I don't know what it is. I'm just throwing unfounded darts on the board right now. But really would be curious to see how things got shaken.
Well, last year we did have a pretty late yellow. We only had,
was it?
We had, it looks like the final 27 minutes of the race were green, but there were looks like 2 full course yellows potentially in the final hour of that race.
Don't listen to me then, man. Don't listen. Listen, my brain was shot at the end of that race.
That's fair. Yeah, you were there in person. We'll cut you some slack.
Don't know. I forgot that then. Ignore what I said. I wouldn't be surprised if we see a continuation of that then, I guess, where we get a little bit of a late race yellow that
no, it makes it more bold when you go against that, though. So
it does. But hey, listen. We should get ready to cut the episode short before I make myself look like more of a fool. But we got a couple people saying some things in the chat. What are the chances of one of the customer GTP cars having a shot to at least get on the podium? A lot higher than non-zero. I'll say
a lot higher than last year.
Yeah, a lot higher than last year. The Porsches, and especially on the WEC side, the customer Porsches are really no less competitive than the factory cars. And especially Proton this year at Daytona, I think is a really stellar driver lineup. And I'll be curious to see what they can do throughout the race. If it comes down to attrition, then certainly we could see them fighting on the podium. I would say they're a lot less likely to win, but podium, yeah, I would say maybe a little bit less than a 50% chance if I had to put a number to it, but not that much lower than that.
You want to hear a bold take?
What's your bold take? They're gonna win?
No.
Okay.
Ben Keating finishes on the podium in both classes.
That would be a show.
I think it could happen.
You get 2 Rolexes if you win both classes?
Oh yeah, I would assume.
Yeah, so
I would assume. Yeah, I think the JDC lineup, we saw JDC and how they just kind of were putting along last year, just putting in, 5th place runs in GTP sort of week in, week out. And I don't see a reason why they couldn't just be that 5th place runner that you get a nice run in the final couple of hours and you sneak onto the podium. And then we know Ben Keating and we talked about that United car in LMP2. I don't know. Double podium for Ben Keating. I could see it.
Yeah. And while you were saying that, if I looked like I was staring off into space, it's because I was thinking back to last year's race, because I forgot that there were yellows at the end. And I really just forgot about the fact that the 60 car ran away with it with
Yes.
Tom Blomqvist at the wheel, no matter how many times they restarted the race. But now I brought it to my memory.
They didn't have anything to help with that, did they?
No. Could be the best GT Pro battle the GT3 class will ever see. Yeah, GTD Pro with the increase in manufacturers this year. More manufacturers. I'm always a big advocate for that. I love seeing we have more cars on the grid. And the fact that I can't give you a definitive answer of who's going to win that class, yeah, real toss-up. What I'm curious to see mainly is when's the day when a GTD car beats a GTD Pro car overall at Daytona?
I feel like last year was the opportunity for that. If we were going to see it happen, but
It was close, but I mean, look at the pace of the cars so far this year. It's already relatively close after qualifying.
It's just
one
tough
of those things
when
to consider.
Yeah, it's just tough when you have 13 of those super strong lineups, like just oozing with factory drivers. Even last year, like there were, I think, 2 entries that were eligible for GTD that ran in the pro class, and just because they wanted to skirt around like drive time requirements, and but there's none of those this year. It would be tough.
Yeah.
But to carry off on Aaron's point, if this is the best GTD Pro battle that we've seen yet, and it tops, what was it, 2022 when we saw the KCMG and FAF going at it the last lap? If it tops that, I will be a happy camper.
Well, and I guess that's the question I have then, because the past few seasons we've had battles at the very end of the race with LMP2 last year and GTD Pro the year before. Who's it going to be this year? Take your pick right now. I would love to see it in GTP personally. I'd love to see that overall battle at the very end. It's been a little while since we've had that, an overall battle at the very end, like similar to what we had in 2017. Maybe this is the year we get that.
Maybe.
When Ben Keating is the AM driver, that's when we'll get a GTD car winning overall in GT.
Yeah.
Good call, Aaron. And then let's see. All I'll say is Rexy getting a podium is so fun and it's crazy. 6 GTD class cars beat out the 3rd best GTD Pro car. Yeah. Yeah, and that's the fact that they're starting mixed as well. That's why I say don't exclude the 100% chance of there being a GTD car throwing a surprise. Maybe not a win, but maybe a podium in the GTD ranks overall. We'll see. So anyways, I think we're getting ready to call it an episode. A little bit of stuff that we went over in today's episode. It was great to have Connor Zilisch and Danny Formel on the podcast as well. Really looking forward to seeing how they can perform at this weekend's Rolex 24. Now, the two of us, barring no unexpected circumstances, will be at the race. So I will say right now, at least on behalf of myself, if you see me at the race, give me a shout. I'm not going to be a stranger. And love to talk some sports car racing because we have a 24-hour race to chat some things, and it should be a really good time.
Yeah, if you see me there, I'm just grouchy. Don't even bother saying hi at all. No, I'm not friendly. So no, if same thing. If you see me wandering around and if you hear some distant A's in the being hollered out, then it's probably me. So love to talk sports car racing.
I hate to break it
MX5 Cup.
Yeah, I hate to break to you, my friend, but they don't, as far as I could tell last year, serve poutine at Daytona.
Oh, they have a wicked poutine at Mosport. I will say that.
Maybe a reason for me to go.
I should have asked Danny if that's why he's looking forward to going to the track.
Yeah,
missed opportunity, I suppose.
Maybe that'll convince me to go this year. No GTP, but at least we got some good food.
Yeah, that's true. You don't get GTP, but you get poutine.
Sacrifices.
Good trade.
Maybe you could have both. Anyways, we're going off the rails a little bit. I think it's a good time to wrap this episode up. Thank you all so much for tuning in. So we will not, unfortunately, be having a post Rolex episode. The gist with this podcast is we're supposed to have an episode before the race and then after the race.
We're supposed to do a lot of things.
We're supposed to do a lot of things that don't end up happening. But at least this one I have an excuse. I'm going to be not really stuck, but extending my stay in Florida after the Daytona 24 to go visit some family and friends. So we will not be having a podcast next Tuesday. But if all things go to plan, the following Tuesday, should be back to give some late race recaps of some of our thoughts on the race, and then we'll move on through a little bit more off season until we get to March with the resuming of the WEC and IMSA championships. So, any more closing thoughts, Stu?
No, just if anybody wants to do a post Rolex debrief, you can find me at Disney. So we can do it. I think they have a cars. I think they have a cars stuff there, so we can go there.
They got Test Track. I think they still have Test Track still in Epcot.
Ooh.
They don't have Walt Disney Speedway anymore, though.
Yeah, I was looking at that. That's a bummer.
It's a parking lot.
Dang it.
Yeah, anyway, we're off the rails. Thank you all so much for tuning in. Hope to catch you in 2 weeks for another episode of the Rain Race Podcast. Have a good night.